Okay, first of all, when did you first meet Rick Nelson?
Well, I think, let's see, it was back in the Poco days, which probably, I think, I'm not real sure of the day. It was in the, must have been around, gosh, I forgot to ask this. Or is it, probably early 70s, I think. It's around 70 or 71, if I'm not mistaken. I could be.
Mm-hmm.
But I met Rick at the Troubadour. He had watched Poco perform before, and so I had met him there originally. And then when I left Poco, and Rick wanted to form a group, and he heard that I'd quit Poco and had called me and wanted to know if I'd help him get a little group together, so that's how we started.
Who was that little group?
Well, the members were, it was the Stone Canyon Band, which was when it was first formed, and that was Alan Kemp and Pat Shanahan and Tom Brumley.
Did Rick say why he wanted to form the Stone Canyon Band?
Well, I don't know if he actually said, but I have a feeling, he hadn't been playing in a while. It was during that area where, he just hadn't been playing, and wanted to get back into the music, and make some more records, I believe. And he kind of liked the idea of maybe kind of a country rock kind of feel. And so that's where we kind of started out.
Okay. Now, his leanings, I guess, were he had just made a couple of very countryized albums. Actually, they were called Bright Lights Country Music and Country Fever. And there was a sense that Rick Nelson really had a lot of country roots. How did you find that? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think he liked country a lot. But I think he wanted to update it a little bit, or not update it. I mean, country's country, but have a little bit of rock and roll in it.
Did Rick express any concern at this point in his life? His records really weren't selling a whole lot. Did he express any concern about record sales and where he was going at that time?
Well, I don't think Rick really thought that way. I think he was always looking at the positive side, or just, not looking back at it, really, and just moving forward, because I never had any negative feeling from him about if something didn't work right. It was just, if it didn't work, it was like, well, let's just go on to something new and try it again.
Going back to when you first met Rick, what did you think of him personally?
Well, I was really amazed as that person with that much success could be just as humble as could be. He was very human and easy to get along with, and never really expressed any problems, if he had any, to anybody else, and was always willing to help, any of the guys in the group if they had a problem. He'd sit down and work with them, and just an all-around good guy.
What was it like? Had you listened to Rick Nelson before that
yes.
time?
Oh, yeah, like Traveling Man and, Lonesome Town and all of his hits back then. Oh, yeah, him and Elvis.
So what was it like meeting Rick Nelson face-to-face all of a sudden in this club?
Well, it was real pleasant. Like I said, sometimes some people, success can make the worst of them, so to say. But he seemed just like a normal guy, like you could talk to him, and there was no ego trips, and very humble.
Now, Rick hadn't charted since 1964 when he did The Very Thought of You. And he formed the Stone Canyon Band, put out a record called She Belongs to Me, and went to number 33. That was in January of 1970. How did he feel about having a hit record again?
Oh, I imagine he felt great. It was just showed that, his efforts in trying to get, to break through again, it had worked.
What kind of places were you guys playing? I mean, Rick and the Stone Canyon Band, when you formed and when you first started playing?
Let's see. I think we had played. It's kind of hard to remember in a way, but I remember we had played the Troubadour, and that's where we recorded one of the first albums. It was at the Troubadour, and just kind of larger clubs, and at that time, I don't think he really started playing the bigger places until later on, after I had left, like Garden Party and stuff, when my friend Steve Love was playing with him.
Mm-hmm. Now,
I think Alan and Pat were still playing with him too, then, if I remember right.
At that time when you first formed, what was the first plan of attack? Was it records first? Did you record first, or did you play out first?
Well, I think we recorded that album at the Troubadour. I remember going to, we did some military bases in Europe. I remember we went to London and then to Germany and to Spain. And that was my first time out of the country, so I was pretty excited to do that. But we played there, and I remember playing in Arizona. There was a few clubs there, like bigger clubs. And I think the main thing, after you make a record, you want to be exposed. So he was trying to get as much exposure and to let people know that he was, still was doing Travel and Man and stuff, but he wanted to, continue doing something else rather than just sticking with that as, kind of what happened in Madison Square Garden there, where people were expecting him just to be the same Rick Nelson that he always was. And, I think that's kind of strange for people to think that somebody shouldn't change and shouldn't have an opportunity to express other ideas in their music.
How did he feel about those old songs? You say that he didn't just want to play Travelin' Man, Hello, Mary Lou, etc., but how did he really feel about the old songs, about doing them at all?
Well, I think he felt great about doing them because it was part of his success, and I think it's good to be able to do those, but I think people, for some reason, I don't know why they were so cranky towards him, because he was just trying to express something new. Maybe I don't really know about the Madison Square Garden because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I'm aware of playing with him when I did, and he would always do the songs, the hits for the people, which you've got to do. Not that you have to, but you want to do because people want to hear them. They come to hear those, and then interject a few of your other songs. And I don't know how their mixture was in Madison Square Garden, but for some reason they didn't take to it.
Sure. I want to talk to you just about for a second here about your involvement with the Stone Canyon Band. You were on the Rick Nelson in concert, of course, and you were also on Rudy the Fifth. But there was an album in between called Rick Sings Nelson, and if I'm correct in that I just got the album and I just really haven't had time to delve into it, if I'm correct, you are not on that album.
Yeah, that is correct. No, after the first album, Live at the Troubadour, we came back. I think that's actually after we got back from the tour in Europe. And I came back, and I was still married at the time, so I moved back to Nebraska for a while because I actually wasn't making enough money, and I was away from my family, and it just kind of wasn't working out. So I lived in Nebraska for about a year, and I think they did this other album you were talking about, and then they started doing Rudy the Fifth, and at that time, I guess the other bass player had decided he had maybe another group or something. So my friend Alan Kemp had called me in Nebraska and had asked me if I would come out just to do a session because they wanted me to sing or play bass on one of these tunes. So that was kind of a thrill after being in Nebraska and working there for a while. And so they flew me out, and I was here, and I did the song with them. And after that, Rick asked me if I'd play with him again. And from there, I moved back out and started playing with Rick, I think, for another maybe a year or something. And during that time is when I met Linda Ronstadt and Glenn Frey and Don Henley. And then I kind of got into the Eagles, and that's when my friend Steve Love, which is in Nebraska, I had him come out with me, and he played bass also. So I asked Rick if it was okay if, I was thinking about going with the Eagles. They had offered me a job, and so I went with the Eagles, and Steve replaced me. So, I wanted to make it so somebody just didn't jump in that didn't know all the songs. So Steve would learn the songs, so it wouldn't be so much of a change, and he had a very good high voice. And Steve was originally the one that did Garden Party with Rick.
Yeah, that career move worked out all right for you, didn't it?
It did, indeed.
You put out some great records, by the way. I love the Eagles sound. You know what's, and this is not on my sheet, but I wanted to address this with you. And that is when the song New Kid in Town came out. It sounded so much like Rick Nelson and the Stone Canyon Band, I really thought it was for a minute. And it actually is on my sheet to ask you the influence that Rick had, if any, on the movement and the music that saw the flourishing of artists such as Linda Ronstadt, America, the Eagles, and that country rock, soft rock type of sound. How much influence do you think Rick really had on that?
Well, I think he was one of the forerunners of country rock. There's no doubt about that. That's, from his change over from country to a little bit of rock intended. Along with Poco, I think Poco and Rick were probably, I know for sure a couple of the forerunners in that.
Rick even mentioned that Poco was kind of the place that he got the idea of doing that kind of sound. So it seems that you influenced him, and then he might have influenced you a bit. Is that how it kind of worked out in the chain of things?
Well, I think it could have. Are you talking still about New Kid in Town?
Basically, the whole the whole country
Yeah, well, I
rock
think it
movement?
did. It all in turn. See, because the Troubadour was a place where a lot of people mingled, and a lot of people came out of there as forerunners of the country rock thing. Because that's where it kind of started. There was kind of folk rock for a while, and then all of a sudden, then it started in with country rock. And I think, like I said, Poco and Rick were, I know they're two of the forerunners of it.
I want to take you back to England for a minute because Rick seemed to be very, very popular. As a matter of fact, the International Rick Nelson Fan Club, which is based in England, is still in existence. How was his reception in England? Did you find it bigger than what was here?
Well, see, in England, I never played any of the bigger halls or anything. That was after I had left. I mean, all we had played was like, the military bases.
Mm-hmm.
So their response was great because, for, Rick Nelson to be playing, over there, and these guys are in the military, it was, I'm sure, a lot of fun for them. But later on, that I did not play, but I as far as I know, he got a real good response, and he must have to have a fan club there.
A lot has been said, and I talked to Jimmy Haskell and James Burton about Rick, of course, and a lot of other people, and a lot's been said about his, what I called savvy, musical savvy, but they called it his taste in music, that he always made very tasteful, clean-sounding records. What's your opinion of that?
Well, I'd have to agree with him. I think he had they were always clean and good, just good. Most of lyrically, it was always very sincere, which I think Rick was.
He's also noted for being a guy who always had top-notch musicians, and this is borne out by just the original members of the Stone Canyon Band and where they went with their careers, and of course James Burton, who is probably one of the premier rock and roll guitarists of all times, and Bobby Neal, who was lost with him. What was your sense about what Rick looked for in musicians?
Well, as far as I know, he, like you say, he had to have a good ear to know what he wanted. That's one thing of knowing what you want, and he must have known what he wanted because he always did have good musicians, I thought.
What he seemed to be a guy that was totally unconcerned with image. I mean, he started out as a teenage idol. He was a star at age 8. Teenage singing idol at age 16, sold 35 million records by the time he was about 21, 22. But he seemed to be very unconcerned that the record stopped selling and that he was playing a lot smaller clubs. What sense did you get about where he was in terms of his own image, and I mean public image?
Well, I think that's something that he really didn't have to worry about because he was loved, as, from back in the days you were talking about, or maybe you don't know.
No, I do know. I've been...
But, I don't think he really had a feeling that he had to be concerned to be a star again because he already was. And so that was kind of behind him, and I think he was just concerned more about progressing in his music.
Yeah. What do you think Rick Nelson's contribution to music is?
Well, just a lot of dedication and, good talent, very humble, and just, he's one of a kind.
You've worked with a lot of great musicians in your time, obviously. In terms of the picture I get of Rick Nelson is just like the song Gypsy Pilot, that here was a guy who all he wanted to do was be playing music. That was it. And a lot of people, of course, have made the observation that he seemed less comfortable in conversation than he did when he was up there singing. He himself said it. And how do you feel about a musician who, for 30 years, just wanted to play music? What is that like from a professional musician standpoint? What do you feel about that?
Well, I feel if you ever stop, that's when you stop developing as a musician. So I think it's something that every musician thinks about, because I haven't been playing in a while, and now I'm just recently starting to play again, and it's really good to just be playing every day, and it doesn't matter if I'm making $1 million every year or something like that. It's the idea of that's what you do, and if you stop it, you feel like anybody else, like you're retired, and I don't think you want to retire. You just want to keep going forward.
Can you tell us a little bit, I found out from Jimmy Haskell and James Burton what the early days in the studio, in the recording studio, was like for Rick, and how they worked out songs and such. You're in a very good position to tell me about what it was like in that mid-year when he had just formed the Stone Canyon Band and before he went on to the Garden Party success and such. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened during those recording sessions? How did you work the things out musically and such?
Well, it was pretty much we did a lot of rehearsals in a little rehearsal studio, and Rick was pretty much would let the band, everybody be comfortable first, just starting out to play and see how things sounded before you really got too much into arrangements. And so we'd leave the songs fairly loose, well, during the rehearsals, and then when we would go in the studio, then John Boylan, I believe, was one of the first producers, and then we would start just making little arrangements here and there, and just pretty much how you normally do it.
Mm-hmm.
From my memories of what time I was in the studio with him, because after Rudy the Fifth, and I did not play,
Yeah. How concerned was Rick about controlling what was going on musically?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, I wanted to know how concerned he was with controlling what was going on musically, and what I mean by that is did he at a certain point say, no, I want it this way, or did he just kind of, was it a community type of effort to bring about the arrangements and the sound?
Well, I think in rehearsals it was a community effort. In everybody talking about things and asking what he thought and asking everybody what they thought, to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the studio, if there was something that he felt strongly about, he would for sure speak up about it and make sure that he would try it and ask other people too at the same time. Say, I feel strongly about this, but what do you guys think? And if we would be no, then he would go ahead and do what he thought. And if we have an idea, he would listen to it. He was always very open about it. And, didn't have a real strong hand of saying, well, we got to do this. Or if he did, he would do it, but he'd do it in a way that you wouldn't even know it, sort of.
Yeah. What's your favorite Rick Nelson song?
Oh, gee, that would be hard to say. I hate to pick certain songs, I like Traveling Man a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And, you go back and I start listening to those, and some of the newer stuff I liked a lot, too, that we did on the live album. There was, Red Balloon. There were a couple on there.
Red Balloon, sure, and you did an outstanding version of "I'm Walking" on that thing. Just kicked.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones. It's hard to pinpoint one, but
yeah. My final question in terms of the interview is: how would you like the world to remember Rick Nelson?
Well, let's see. I think I know that he loved his kids very much. So I think he remembered as a good father and a great musician and a very humble, sincere person. And I don't know, that might sum it up in some ways.
When was the last time that you saw Rick, Randy?
It was probably about a year and a half previous to his accident. And I think I saw him at the Palomino Club here. I saw he was playing, and I went out to see him, and we came home and had a long talk and stayed up pretty late.
Did you have a sense of where he was going musically at that time?
Not really at the time. He was still kind of, doing some of his older songs and some of the newer material. But I think, the thing of him just basically always wanting to work, he wanted to be on the road and do his music. And probably, the older you get, the more you want to do it sometimes. Because,
Mm-hmm.
Life seems to get shorter at that point.
Yeah. To have you and so many people that have been involved in his life on this special is just so gratifying. It's literally a labor of love for me. I really, really do appreciate this. Thank you so much for being on, and thanks for spending some time with me.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Randy.
All right, John.
Good night.